management work. Thank you, Brad. And I'll start, Brad, yung presentation ni Sir.
Yeah.
Tama. Yan. Brad, thank you. Mag-ano na lang tayo siguro, before we start the next part, magpa-survey tayo or something sa mga umattend na Brads about the launch and about the mentoring program. We'll discuss it later on. Yeah.
Okay.
Sir Tom?
You ready?
The floor is yours, sir. Ay, sorry, Alter. Parang
So
may mga
before,
nakaharap.
okay. I think yung band ng
Yeah,
it's
ng Zoom.
yeah,
Just mo
yeah.
na lang, Brad.
Ulit mo.
Yung screen sharing, yung
Yeah.
nakaharang pa rin siya, Brad. Move mo ba down or down siguro, Brad? The brother. Or sige. Sige. Go ahead. I think that's better. Medyo nawala. Thank you, Brad. Sir Tom, go ahead, sir.
Okay. So
It's
good
10 hours.
morning. Good morning, everybody. So I was asked by Adric to conduct a workshop on the fundamentals of project management. And I know he gave me something like 5 hours to do it, but we'll see how long I'll last. Um, if you have questions, just raise your hands or write it in the chat. And I hope Edric or somebody else is monitoring the chat. So
Yes, sir. We will.
feel free to interrupt me if you have some questions or clarifications. Um, so this will be a just a basic introduction to project management, and I won't be going so much into the details, but just give you enough to make you dangerous. But before we start, I'd like to get to know more about the participants. So if you could please, one by one, just tell me or tell the group your name, your area of expertise, uh, why you chose to take this, this workshop if you were not forced by Adric, or what do you expect to gain out of this? And also, tell me if you have had formal project management training or not, so I can make adjustments in the discussion as needed. So I'll let you
Sir,
start.
let me start.
Yep.
I volunteer to start. And all of the attendees today are were forced by me because they are the chapter officers and the committee heads for the Dash 2026. So yeah, I am Edric, the chapter commander. Graduated in 2002, and also well, I think the project management training I got was in the Forcer when we had our 4 projects during the ROTC week. So I handled then the medical dental mission during when we were second classmen incoming first when during the OJT season or OJT period towards the end of the year. So that was my first and only, I think, first and only experience in project management. But which I did for most of the part was one project management by a one-man team. And well, the other, what do you call this? Other projects are this year for the university chapter. So pardon me, sir, for the rush and the the and the all the unrealistic uh, what do you call timelines that I've set for especially for this mentoring program. Okay, who wants to go next, Brad?
Pwede po ako, sir.
Thank you,
Hello,
Liz.
Sir Tom. I'm Liz. Ako po yung adjutant ng UNIV, class 2023. Um, so, in the core, yung mga naging roles ko were, as usual, mga line command stuff. And I was generally put in publicity or other creative related roles. Um, and so in terms of yung background ko with project management, yung hands-on experience ko really comes from the core. But in school, I took one course called something like business analysis, and among that were topics like decision analysis, finding the critical path of the project. But um, although I did take that in theory, medyo hindi ko pa nakikita how to use it in a real project. So, yun, sir.
Thank you, Liz. Who wants to go next?
Hey, hey Brad, I'll go next. I was supposed to
Wait,
go earlier but ina-adjust ko yung screen ko kasi baliktad yung for some reason. At baliktad pa yung baliktad
baliktad
ako,
pa
no?
rin. Hanggang ngayon,
Yeah, teka
baliktad.
lang ha. Kanina pa to eh. Sorry no. I'm in IT pero teka lang. Sorry. Give me 1 minute no. Kanina pa to eh. Mir.
Okay lang, Brad. Okay lang din naman na baliktad ka.
Ah,
Sige na, okay na yan.
mirror my video.
Ayan, baka mirror. Or yung camera, baliktad rin mo, Brad. Nasa laptop ba?
Laptop kasi ito eh.
Okay. Mas
Ano ba?
mahirap, Brad. Ayan, okay na.
But
Beto.
my background is baliktad, no? Anyway, never mind. Yes, sige. Okay, sige. Ba't am I still here? O nag-freeze na yung ano ko?
Choppy. Choppy.
Nag-freeze
Pero,
na.
off mo na lang yung video mo, Brad. Baka, tapos, go ahead. Freeze ka na nga. Si JJ
Am I
ba
still here? Wala na. Naghang na ako. Ang na lang.
nag yes,
May
brother.
boses po kayo, sir.
Yeah, may audio.
Yeah, you can
Sige,
just
sorry.
yeah, you can just introduce yourself.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brad. Kahit walang video. That's my classmate. He's from Tarlac, sir. So, yeah. Ay, nakamute ka naman, Jay.
Okay, am I back? Sorry, Brad. No, sorry.
Yes, you're back. Go ahead.
Sige, pag sa laptop kasi choppy, I was on my mobile earlier. But anyway, sige. I'm JJ. I'm the classmate of Edric also from the class 2002. Siyang core commander namin. Um, ano, in order ako na mag-join dito. This by order. So if you wanna know, Brad and Sir, no? And core commander kasi sa show, I have no choice. I'm also currently the Provo Marshal ng University chapter. Alright. So, class 2002 ako, no, mag-25th na kami in 2 years time. So, medyo matagal na rin ako sa workforce. I'm actually planning on my retirement already in the next several years. I'm with the IT industry for almost 20 years na. And in terms of project management, I really have no uh, formal training sa project management, but I've been involved with several projects. Kasi sa IT, maraming projects yan eh. Mostly on the implementation part. But on the planning part, none really. But I have an idea on project management sa sa perspective naman ng IT. Right? So and ayun, I still joined because as I put on the form, no, I wanted to learn siguro yeah, yung actual project management, and at the same time I feel that I'll be able to share din naman the knowledge I gathered from almost 20 years of working with IT, no? And also eventually I plan to if I'm able, if I have the time, I also plan to be a mentor sa sa magiging sa program ng university chapter. So thank you, sir, also for volunteering your time here, and also thanks to also Edric for coming up, for pushing to have this program. Push. We have this discussion. No, I medyo ninututulan ko to kasi it's a very big undertaking. But thank you for pushing this.
Thank you, Jay. Next. Who's next?
Ako na.
Yeah, go Aster.
I'll take it. Good morning, Sir Tom. Good morning, everyone. Si Alster po. Class of 2005 of Diliman. So, apat kaming 2005 and two of us, nung core commander namin, came from the Dash B. And we claim to be the snappier batch than the R Class A. so, but they also know that naman. So, ako naman, Sir Tom, I've been working in the development sector for the last 15 years. Started with a small local development organization, now with an international.
Alster, time out. Papin yung sarili mo, Brad.
Oh,
Sorry. Thank you.
now in an international organization, Oxfam. So, in terms of project management, medyo I know a thing or two kasi I do some project proposal writing and implement and co-implement projects din with the development partners. So, pero iba rin kasi yung the experience we had in when we were in the core, writing op plans, implementing these op plans with as a student. So, ibang level din to, Sir Tom, if ever that we are now in our respective professional fields, maganda pa rin to learn something from someone like you that already had decades of working and mentoring people on the project management. So looking forward, not just for the Dash but for the upcoming and future project na handle ng university chapter. Yan, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. GA, can you
Hi, Chop. Dinig po ba ako?
Yes, loud and clear.
Hi, Sir Tom. I am GA po, class of 2023. Andrea Kay Gonzalez yung full name ko, pero GA po yung nickname ko sa core and sa Vanguard. And I am a recent young professional food technologist. Food technology yung course ko during my undergrad years po. And I have experience sa business development sa San Miguel Foods, and I will be working as QA analyst na rin next year sa Magnum po. In terms of project management, same sa lahat po na walang formal training. Our experience sa project management comes from the core. And yung pinaka-recent ko na lang siguro po is yung experience ko sa co-implementation ko sa special project namin sa San Miguel. Yan po. Pero hindi po ako yung leader. More on, I'm just part of the core team for the planning until the launching of the project. And nung na-pitch to ni Chop, yung project management na program is I fully supported this personally kasi this is a very good way to learn more and in terms of the project management kasi wala nga rin kaming formal training, and maganda siyang improvement for us young adults po, and also soft skill din for us sa work, sa career life po namin, and very good opportunity siya for us po. Yun po yung main reason po. Hindi po ako pinurse ni Chap.
Yeah. So for your information, AG or GA, AG. GA. My
GA
wife
is
and my
probably
daughter, yeah, my wife and my daughter are both food scientists. So they're in the same field as you.
Kaya GA, sir, kasi dalawa silang Gonzales sa plastic
Gonzalez, yeah.
tan. So, siya si GA, yung isa naman GK.
Okay,
Just to
all right.
differentiate. Yan. I think Brad Addy is in a, unable. Brad Addy, able, parang nasa labas daw yata kasi siya. He texted me earlier. So, listening mode lang. Unless you're able, Brad, you can unmute anytime. Si Mervin naman. Mervin, kaya na?
Yes.
Baka gising na.
Yes, Chap. Gising na yung
Baka
mga
gising
tao.
na. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chap. Morning po, Sir Tom. I'm Mervin from Vanguard Class 2025. I'm also the current chapter auditor. I'm actually unaware may workshop pala today. Kala ko tapos na nung yung sa mentoring launch kanina. Anyway, so I'm just a recent graduate sa journalism. Just this last
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up.
than that, in terms of project management po, yeah, like others, all came from the core because I was also the core G5, the core plans and projects officer. Medyo na-stress ako nun kasi ang daming sunod-sunod na mga projects na binabantayan ko at humihingi ako ng mga updates sa bawat COIC. But nevertheless, it was naman. I believe parang surface level lang yung in terms of project management skills na naranasan ko. So, I'm hoping to learn more from this session. So, yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Merv. Now I understand bakit hindi pwedeng sabihin ano yung tinitake mo. Intelligence pa. I think we have another Brad na who is sa US naman, sir, na I'm not sure kung intelligence or nasa military field na very limited lang yung access namin sa kanya. He's the brother of my classmate, si Rich.
Our Corps Commander
Or
2005,
commander
sir.
ng nila Alster, yes. Si Renerico Moneda. So, the same as, I think, baka yun yung magiging concern din ni Mervin later on. Na baka hindi siya ganun ka-accessible to us in terms of the dapat ma-report daw lahat ng kukontakin niya and lahat ng nakausap niya, na-meet niya, so on. Ayan. So, I think si Ellie also joined us. Ellie, we're introducing ourselves, Brad, tsaka any short background, tsaka yung experience in project management. Brad, can you share?
Thank you, sir. Sorry, I have to step out earlier. Good afternoon, Sir Tom, Chap, Brods, and Sirs. I'm Ellie. I'm currently working as a supply chain practitioner in Century Pacific. Been in the industry for almost 15 years, so it's always a pleasure to learn. Project management naman is a continuous rin naman, journey and learning, even for us in the corporate field. So thank you for the opportunity, sir. Morning.
Thank you so much, Brad. Did I miss anybody else? Wala na. Everybody else already introduced.
All right. Thank you for introducing yourselves. Yeah, it helps to get a little bit of background sa mga participants sa audience. So, what I will be presenting to you is a shorter version of a regular project management course for the unofficial project managers. I'm one of the certified facilitators for the Franklin Covey project management course. And as a disclosure, most of the slides that I included here are part of that training module. I was trying to develop my own, but in a short period of time, when Edric asked me to do this within less than a week, so this is the best I can come up with. But I think this will work for most of the participants today. Um, this won't be that technical compared to if you're taking actually the project management professional certification program, which I also took. It's about 6 sessions for 1 day each session, so it's really intensive. But for the most part, I should say about I'm only getting able to use about 20 to 30% of what was offered in that course. Because if you're not really into managing big projects, big complicated projects, you really don't need most of what is being covered there. It's mainly to get you to pass the certification program. And for those of you who are down the line might be interested in getting the PMP certification, it's a good certification to put in your resume because project management is one of the in-demand fields in different industries. So it's nice to have that in your belt. Um, to introduce myself, I didn't get to learn project management in college because it's not one of the regular coursework for most degree programs. Unless you're in civil engineering, where you have one course in construction management and project management is one of the topics covered there. Or if you're industrial engineering, it's one of the key tools that you get trained on. Or if you're in business, in operations and production management, project management is one of the topics under that course or program. But I was lucky that my first job was with the Development Academy of the Philippines, and I was involved in uh, a fisheries development program. So we go to the field and we actually organize small scale fishermen into fishermen's association, and we help them actually become essentially entrepreneurs with different technical projects that get funded through various funding agencies. And because of the need of the job, DAP wanted to make sure that their staff are proficient in some of the things that they need. And among the things that we're required to be proficient with, at least in that project, is how to develop project feasibility studies. And in one of the topics under the management aspect of developing project feasibility studies, they invited a speaker coming from one of the DAP group, the Asian Productivity Organization, during that time. Um, and when he delivered his presentation, what he delivered was a short course in project management. And that was the first time I've heard about project management. And I was enamored about it. So the training program was conducted in the DAP Tagaytay Training Center. So once that 15-day training was completed, the first thing I did when we came back to Makati, which was where DAP's office was during that time, was go straight to the bookstore and look for references in project management. And I was lucky to find one, the only one actually, in the bookshelves, which is called the PERT CPM. That's the original title of project management. PERT CPM is an acronym for Project Evaluation and Review Techniques, Critical Path Method. So to give you a background on the development of that concept or the tool, for those of you who's new to this concept, it was actually in the 1960s when the then President John F. Kennedy gave a speech where in one of the component of the speech he basically said, I want the United States basically to send a man to the moon and safely back within the decade. And of course, he said that with a Boston accent, so it's kind of interesting to if you're interested in YouTube President Kennedy's speech, and it's one of them. But if you think about it, that was the time when the Cold War was starting, and the United States was actually, uh, sort of their confidence has been shattered because the Soviet Union, the USSR during that time, was the first one to actually send a rocket to space and actually delivered Sputnik, which is the first man-made satellite in space. And it was sending signals to the Earth that everybody with a radio can actually hear the Morse code signal being sent by Sputnik. And that really scared the heck out of Americans because now they have the Soviet Union, the enemy, that with their satellite revolving around the Earth, and that's why uh, President Kennedy gave everybody that challenge. That in his administration, he wants to enable Americans to actually develop the technology that will outcompete the Soviet Union, and it's a big challenge because he's trying to actually bring something that's non-existent, a technology that's still being developed from World War II, and actually send not only a satellite in orbit in the Earth, but actually to bring a man on the moon and back to Earth safely within 10 years. So that's quite a challenge. Not to include the ghost projects and everything, right? So NASA, which was newly established during that time as the agency to basically implement that challenge, um, has to think of different ways of doing things. They cannot achieve the 10-year goal, big, hairy, audacious goal, within 10 years using the same old technology and the same old technique. And that's why, according to NASA, they developed the project evaluation and review techniques, which revolutionized the project planning, implementation, monitoring, etc. Of course, that's the historical version of NASA. And the reason I say that is because when I took the project management course in my MBA program, the professor basically said, "Well, I was, in the meeting where NASA presented this history about, who developed the project management technique, and somebody from the audience, actually from the military, raised his hand and he said, no, actually, we developed that first when we actually developed the first nuclear submarine, the ballistic carrying nuclear submarine, and it was developed way back." The only reason why they cannot say that they developed it is because being in the military, just some of our brad here who's going to the intelligence service, the military is not allowed to tell others what they're doing, especially one that the enemy could hear because it's a military secret, right? And so NASA, on the other hand, is a civilian agency, and they can say what they're doing. So it's not different from uh, the mentality of the explorers and the fishermen, right? One question that in the historical books is who discovered America, and they'll say what, Christopher Columbus or Amerigo Vespucci, right? These are explorers, but when you actually trace the records, uh, fishermen from northern Spain were already going to the Great Banks and into the east coast of the United States, even way back in the 13, 14, 1500s. But they're not telling anybody about it because it's a trade secret. If you're a fisherman, you don't know where you're fishing. If you're an explorer, you want to tell everybody where you were able to go, right? So different perspective. But anyway, enough of that. Let's start the course. Next slide, please. Okay, so go back one slide. Okay, so this is the plan of work for this session. We're done with the introductions. I'll go to some just key definitions and guiding principles, and then we go straight into project management framework. And I'll actually discuss step by step the uh, um, the main elements of what project management is all about. Next slide, please. So the first question is definition of terms. What is a project? Can anybody read the definition here, please? I want this to be interactive. Any volunteers? Come on, don't be shy.
Ako na lang, sir.
Okay, please.
What is a project? It is a unique, non-recurring, temporary endeavor with a start and end date, undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result.
Okay, Liz, how do you interpret that?
That, ano po, sir, a project is different from, let's say, a regular business process because it is temporary,
Mhm.
and you also have a timeline for it. Ayun po.
Okay, good, good. So you're aiming for a deliverable, whether it's a product, service, or result, right? And it should be unique, meaning it hasn't been done before. And non-recurring meaning it's not to be repeated again, right? So it's a one-time unique set of activities that you actually have a stated start and a projected end date to achieve a particular um, result, right? So that is what a project is all about. And you're right, it's different from a regular business process. For example, let's say a production process in manufacturing, where you do the same thing over and over and over ad infinitum, right? So keep that in mind. That a project is basically a module in itself, and you make sure that you apply project management where it should be applied rather than in a say a production process. There are different management techniques for that, like for example, um, you know quality management, kanban management. Those are some of the tools that you can use in recurring process oriented type of management. Next slide, please. Okay, for our purposes, we have to define what is meant by success. In this case, how do you how do you how could you say that your project was a success? You can look at it as success as a function of three things: value plus people and process. So you already heard from the mentoring part the value of people, right? Without people, you would have you have nothing. Or well, I guess with AI, partly you have people out of the picture, right? But in general, if you don't have people, you basically don't have anything. Uh, Without value, what is it that you're getting out of whatever you're building? Then you won't get, you won't achieve success. But you cannot just say, okay, I want this group to produce X widgets using this team to do it, and say, okay, just do it and give me the results, say next month. Usually that doesn't work because they're flying blind. You need a process. You need a way to actually do it, and the better the process, the better you'll achieve success. Meaning, the better you're able to work with people, by people, and with the resources available to you in order to produce the value that you want to get. So the image here is just to emphasize for example, in a basketball game, you don't just have players, playing for the team, but you need to make sure that they're all aiming for the same goal. Literally, in this case, right? You want to shoot, get as many points because that's how you win. Right? But in order to do that, they actually have hours and days and years of training on how to do things the right way. And that's the process. And sometimes that's the main advantage of, say, one team over the other. And that just emphasizes that success cannot be had if you just have one element, two elements. You have to have at least three elements working well together. And incidentally, one of the issues that even the star players, whether in the NBA or some other teams, experience when they go to the Olympics is that they really mess up big time. And the reason is because they all have star players. They have somewhat a process, but it's not well coordinated because they have only a few months to actually train for the Olympics. And, when push comes to shove, the individual egos actually dominate and it destroys the whole process altogether. So just keep that in mind. Next slide, please, unless you have some question or clarification. Okay. So the Franklin Covey project management framework is a very much simplified um, way of presenting project management. The We already discussed what a project is, but there's another term that's attached to project management, which is the management component. Okay, so the management side, the best example of what management is all about is given by Dr. Peter Drucker, a management guru, where he said management is all about lining up um, people in order to do certain things. And the major component of management is planning, organizing, staffing, implementing, motivating, or monitoring, controlling, and basically motivating people to do that. So if you think about that, when you combine project management together, you can simplify Dr. Drucker's prescription of what management is all about into this basically one, two, three, four, five parts: initiation, planning, execution, and overall working all together. With all of those elements, is monitoring, controlling, and then closing. And that's how I will present this course to you. We will discuss what is initiation, what is needed in initiation, what's involved in planning, what you need to know about execution, how do you monitor and control and close. Uh, when I was discussing the scope of this workshop with Edric, he mentioned that you're most interested in mainly the on the planning side is the scheduling, um,
Yes, sir.
right, and also the risk management. So I'll focus a little bit on those two aspects and browse through quickly on some of the rest, and we can leave that for some time later in more advanced or intermediate course in project management. So, any questions before we start going through this framework?
Sir, basically, we've already undergone the initiation part and
Mm-hmm.
some of the planning part for Dash. So
Mm-hmm.
I just would want us to have to have a more concrete plan for that, especially that we have already secured the date for the use of the UP campus
Mm-hmm.
and the planning and the execution part later on. Sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So my approach here is not to actually mess around with what you already did. What I'm gonna do is give you the framework that you can use and apply with any project. So it's basically laying the groundwork so that when you work on project, whether at home, at work, or within the organization, within the group, that you at least basically you know the basics, and you can communicate with people who also know the same basics, so that you actually shorten the means of communication and and prevent misunderstanding. So that we say, okay, we're in the initiation stage of a project. Everybody knows what is involved and what you need to do, versus basically explaining again the whole concept, etc., with those new to the concept. So that's the idea. It will be for your own um, for your own future, as well as current needs. Next slide, please. So the initiate part is, usually people forget about this, but actually this is the most important. It's um, it's a way by which you actually understand what your stakeholders want and what you can deliver, so that you're all working in the same base, so there's less misunderstanding. And you want those goals to be what is known as smart goals. Does anybody here know what smart goals are? Anybody?
Sir, specific, measurable, attainable, time-bound,
And
realistic.
are realistic.
Realistic. Yes, sir.
Thank you, John. Very good. So smart is it should be smart goals, meaning specific. You have to really focus on what is it that you want to do. It should be measurable, so that you don't just wing it, right? You actually have metrics and data to actually say, okay, I'm 80% of my goals, or 100% accomplishment of my goal. It should be attainable, meaning you don't put pie in the sky type of objectives, to the point that nobody can achieve it. You want to make sure that it's attainable. It needs to be realistic, meaning it really makes sense, and time bound, meaning it's not an open-ended objective. Otherwise, if it's an open-ended objective, it's not a goal. It's basically an aspirational vision. To make it happen, you need to make sure that you have a time frame by which you can actually accomplish that goal. So the mindset that you have to put in when you're in the initiation stage is, uh, how do you want stakeholders and the project team, especially the project leader, to work, so that you get a clarity on what you want done, and the set of deliverables that you will actually be expected to produce. So next slide, please. So key questions to ask in the initiation stage of the project: who's impacted by the project? Okay, that's important. Who determines success, and what are their expectations? What are the project's limitations? How do you create a shared understanding of the project outcomes? And I'll give you a short, quick sort of mnemonics for that. Next slide, please. Actually, yeah. Before I go to the mnemonics, I'll discuss skill set and the tool set. Because in project management, you need to know the skills, and you're also provided, for most instances, the tools to actually help you get to where you want to go. So in this case, the skill set is that you should be able to identify stakeholders. Who are your stakeholders? You should also develop skills for interviewing key stakeholders, so you get to systematically understand what their needs are and what they expect of the project. And then, of course, it's important in project management to make sure that you document the project scope. And this third bullet is important, because you don't want to get into what is known in project management as a scope creep, meaning they ask you to do certain things, and then once you're already doing it, they kept adding things for you to do within the time frame and scope of the project, which were not originally in the original agreement. So you want to document, the scope, so that you don't get into that situation. Next slide, please. Okay. So the first question, of course, is if you want to get an idea as to what the stakeholders want, you have to define first who are your stakeholders. So, can anybody read the definition of what a stakeholder is?
Ako na lang
Mm.
po, let's say.
Oh, okay, Liz.
A
Okay.
stakeholder is a person or an organization that is actively involved in the project or that is positively or negatively impacted by it.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. So, that definition is important because most people think that the stakeholders are the ones who will be either actively involved in the project or is actually paying you for the project, right? Or who's actually contracting you for the project. But when you look at stakeholders, you need to expand it a little bit more beyond that narrow scope. What it means is that you have to also look at who will be positively or negatively impacted by it, because that could determine, in some cases, the success or failure of the project. Especially, and this is also important when you're looking at the risks that will involve in that project's potential success or not, because you never know who will actually maybe negatively impacted by the project that will work actively to not make it happen. So it's important that you increase your or widen the scope of your definition of who the stakeholders are. And next, next slide, please. And this slide basically just says, make sure you know who your key stakeholders are. And the key stakeholders, so you have a host of stakeholders, but you also need to look at who are the most important stakeholders that you need to take care of, because this person or organizations will be the one that will determine whether your project becomes a success or not. So the key question here is, do you know who is your project's key stakeholder? That's something for you to think about, especially with the dash. And I'll give you some examples on how to look at it by looking at the next slide, please. Okay. These are the key stakeholder attributes, or in short, this is how you dance with the stakeholders, or the stakeholder dance. And it's an acronym for D for decisions. These are the stakeholders who control or influence the project's budget. So in Dash, who's that? Who are those people, right? They should, if you identify those people, then they're a key stakeholder for that project. Authority, who will actually give you permission to proceed? Is it the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Community Affairs? Is it the Commandant of Cadets? Is it the National Commander of the UP Vanguards? You have to be able to identify who has the authority or the permission for you to proceed with the Dash project in this case. Need. These are the people who will directly benefit from or will be impacted by the project. Okay. And as I said, you have to expand it. You have to brainstorm and expand it beyond the traditional narrow definition of who's gonna be needing it, because that can help you either adjust your, say, for example, marketing and communications plan, or you can also look at the risk that might get in trouble if you miss some people that will be negatively impacted by your project. So as an exercise, let me ask the group. When you're gonna implement Dash, who do you think will be who will directly benefit from the fun run?
The university chapters. Since
Okay.
it's the
Why
fund
don't
boost.
we do? Why don't you put that in the chat? Everybody,
Ah,
put as many people that you think will benefit
pardon.
directly from the project. Write it in the chat. Come on, don't be shy. I don't see anything. I think University chapter and UPCOC. Okay. Vanguards would like to run. How about non-vanguards would like to run? Running community. Good. Who else? UP. Good. Will be a good, you know, good image of the university. Who else? Come on. Get your creative juices running. Artist alumni and current cadets. Okay, good. Who else? Military force and friends. Good. Who else? Do you have sponsors? Do you have, you know, are you soliciting sponsors who will help you, right? Okay, sponsors and donors, concessionaires. Good. Okay. Okay, that's good. So you see what I'm leading up here. If you're able to identify the beneficiaries of your project, you're actually, in theory, expanding your range of ideas. Say, for example, whether it's in marketing or in planning, etc., because you're able to figure out who might be benefiting from this. Okay, now let's go to the other side. Who do you think may not benefit or will be negatively impacted by the fun run that you should consider? Write it again on the chat, please. Casual workers, runners in UP. Okay, good, good. Who else? Car drivers. Yeah, you're blocking the way, right? What's PMO?
Sir, the office that takes care of the under OBCCA, sir.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't remember the ano nga ba yung PMO, Brad? Sorry.
Public maintenance office or
Yeah,
something.
something like that, sir.
Okay, good, good. On the other hand, if you think about it, that's a job security, right? If they have something to clean, then they're assured a job. Anti-ROTC group, good. People who are against fun runs at UP campus, all right, good. Right. All right. Okay, let's continue. Thank you for your responses. Those are good, and keep that in mind because we will come back with on those answers when we get to the risk management part. Connections. Connections are the ones who could potentially remove roadblocks or exert influence when needed to ensure project success. Again, again, you want to have a network of friends and supporters in the community because you never know who will be able to help you if you come up with a roadblock, whether from people who actually don't want the project to run or those negatively impacted by the project, or if you have problems, say for example, with budget, right, with organization, permits, etc. So connections are important. They are key stakeholders. And last is energy. These are the people who will actually encourage the group, as well as when you get into the actual implementation, um, who will be the ones who give pep talk, motivational speeches, rara, right, things, so that the project will become a success. Um, any questions about the key stakeholder dance? So just remember to dance when you're looking at stakeholders, right? Next slide, please. All right. So for the tools, what Franklin Covey suggests is you actually come up with a tool to document uh, the key stakeholder interview. That's so basically you identify the stakeholders, the key stakeholders, and you want to be prepared to actually talk to them because the goal here is to actually uh, understand the purpose of the meeting and what the stakeholders or what you will be discussing with the stakeholders. And basically, you're trying to extract information from the stakeholders in terms of their key concerns, what are the project outcomes that you want them to know, and whether they'll be able to, or you will be able to meet their expectations. So that's the short part of it, introduction. Then you proceed with a more detailed questioning of the stakeholders. So you have sort of this cheat sheet that you carry with you, where you actually systematically interview and ask the key stakeholders a certain number of key topics. So one of the first things you actually ask the stakeholder is, and also, this is a two-way street, is what is the key reason for the project, right? So, for example, if you're gonna be talking to the vice chancellor for community affairs, how would you present your project concept? So ahead of time, you actually already, write the key reasons and justifications for the project, and make sure that it matches what the vice chancellor might be thinking or want to do, so that you can actually strategize on how you're actually convince and present the project to the vice chancellor, so that you'll get smooth sailing, and if possible, actually get their cooperation and collaboration. So, which means that you have to describe the how, what, when are the key deliverables of the project. You want to make sure that they're tangible enough so that you actually understand and they understand what you're getting at. Um, then the desired results, which is a prioritization of the list of the specific and measurable deliverables. And the next part is exclusions. This is where you want to specify what is in scope and what is out of scope. And this is to prevent scope creep. You want to delimit what you're going to deliver, and what they will agree is the set of deliverables. So everybody's in the same page. So, which means that you go to the next part, which is communication needs, the how, who, how often, etc. You communicate with the key stakeholders. Uh, to make it formal, right, you want documentation, and I actually appreciate the way you frame it. For example, for the Office of Vice Chancellor, you sent him a formal letter, and you want to get an acknowledgement. So the acceptance, if possible, needs to be one that's on paper and is signed off, so that if problems arise, you can always refer to that paper and say, "This is what we agreed upon," and you sign off on it, right? And then, in relation to the exclusions, you also want to specify the constraints. This is a prioritized list of restrictions or limitations, both on your side as well as on the key stakeholder side. So you want to get what are the constraints, in terms of hosting a fun run in the UP campus, from the perspective, for example, of the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Community Affairs. You need to make sure those are identified and recorded. And then once you're satisfied and your stakeholders satisfied that you had a meeting of the minds, you go to the closing stage. And basically, it's just a recap or reiteration of what both of you have agreed upon. Again, so that you're on the same page. So this is the tool set that you will need for the key stakeholder interview. Any questions so far?
None, sir.
Next slide, please. Okay. This part just shows you what are the possible areas of constraints. Um, either scope, quality, resources, budget, risk, time. You can think of others, but these are the 6 key constraint factors that you need to think about when planning any project. Next slide, please. Okay, we're done with initiation. We know what we want to do as part of the project. and we know what the stakeholders want and expect. We had a meeting of the minds. We encapsulated everything. We defined the scope of the project, the key deliverables, etc., etc. Now we need to get down to, you know, the hard part of the whole thing, which is planning the project. And like in any plan, and you've been doing a lot of plan and similar things like that you learned from ROTC. The idea there is that you want to get a clear roadmap so that when you actually implement something, it will enable you to make smart decision ahead of the actual implementation and during the implementation. Okay, so and also to make sure that everybody's clear about what you're supposed to do. Next slide, please. All right. Actually, is it looks like it's not in the same order, but that's fine. Okay. All right. So Edric
It's
wanted
11 hours.
Edric wanted some basic idea on how do you actually identify risks. And in project management, it's a formula. The risk is a 2 by 2 table, like what is shown here in the slide, and it's a combination of the impact of a particular, say, activity, right, and the probability of that activity from happening. Okay. And you can rate it from 0 to 5 or 0 to 100%. It's up to you, but usually it's only about 0 to 5 is the easier way to do it, and that in most cases is sufficient. So it's both a rating for the probability as well as for the impact. The reason why we're doing that is because risk, we need to define what is risk, and most people don't actually uh, have a conception of what risk is. So in project management, we actually specify that it's actually the result of the impact and probability of whatever it is that will be occurring. And what you get out of this is a score, a risk score. And the risk score is basically, let's say, all right, during the fun run, on the day of the fun run, one of the things that could impact the success of the fun run would be weather. If there's a hurricane or typhoon that is passing by during that time, what is the impact of that event on the fun run? So you ask yourself from a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being low or no impact, to 5 with the highest impact, what will you give the passing by of a typhoon during the date of the fun run? Okay, so let's say you give it a score of 4, right? Some people still want to run, but most won't. So on the impact side, you can give it, say, a score of 4 or 5, right? But that's sufficient. It doesn't give you much, right? So you need to look at, okay, what is the probability that a typhoon will actually be occurring during the time you actually scheduled the fun run? So what's the actual date of the fun run now? That the tentative date?
Sir, June 7.
June. All right. Now June is what?
Rainy season.
Rainy season. Right. So you go to Pag-asa and look at what is the long term probability of actually hurricanes passing by
Or we'll go to
in
Pag-asa and tell them to forecast that it will rain so that it will. Just kidding, just kidding.
so or when I don't know if they still do that during a time in the cadet corps when we have the uh, the core sponsors parade in review, right?
Presentation of sponsors, yes.
Yeah, and that happens around the rainy season, right? So, what the core and the commandant and the tactical officer does to hedge against rain uh, falling in during the the core sponsors parade is we actually donate eggs to I think one of the convents that's known for actually controlling the weather, so to speak.
Yes.
That's a tradition, right? You're hedging
Yeah.
your bets.
And
But anyway, so June, what's the probability that a typhoon will occur in June? I don't know, maybe 3
4, 3 to 4.
or 4.
Yes.
So now you're looking at what is the actual risk that it could derail the fun run. Now you have in terms of weather as one of the risk factor, you have a score of 4 times 4 is 16. So that's your point, risk factor score. So you keep that, you tabulate that, and then you look at all of the other risks that you list and do the same. So next slide, please. Okay, this is what I'm referring to. This is a form that you need to, sort of come up with. On the first column, we actually list the different risk factors that could happen uh, during, say, in our example, for the fun run event, and then you use the calculation of risk to actually determine the score for that particular risk factor. Okay, so the next step is actually to arrange the score from highest to lowest. So you're actually ranking the risk factors, right? So when you do that, then you can actually prioritize, say, the top 3 uh, factors that will be high impact and high probability of occurrence compared to the rest. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to come up with a strategy to basically do something for that risk. And you also want to sort of assign somebody to be the point of contact to take care of that part. So, any questions before we go to the next slide?
Sir Tom, quick question
Yes.
lang.
Mhm.
Di ba there are organizations who are risk tolerant. So parang I
Mhm.
just was just reminded of the UPLB Los Baños chapters presentation, no.
Mhm.
Uh Parang they had that risk of having only 29,000 but they still uh, uh push it and was able to generate funds. So
Mhm.
with the risk management plan, sir, and also the calculation in the earlier slide, does the subjective part of the group or the organization also comes in? Oh, kaya natin yan. Hindi tayo risk averse. Risk taker tayo. Ganun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's true. Next slide, please. Maybe this will answer your part of your question. So what you're talking about is a risk management strategies, like so you know the risk, the ranking of that risk. What do you do, right? So there are possible ways by which you can approach this. You can transfer the risk, meaning you contract, say, somebody to do whatever you want to do, so they assume all of the risk, or you actually get insurance. That's the reason why we get insurance. You're actually transferring the risk to another company, right? So that's one way to do it. Or you can accept the risk. What you mentioned, oh, we're a risk-taking, organization. We can take it. We'll give it on, right? So you're accepting the risk. You acknowledge the risk, and you're saying that we can take it on if it occurs. Right? Or you can mitigate the risk, meaning you know that there's a risk, but you can actually make it less risky. All right. So the way we did it for the uh, core sponsor parade is, how do we mitigate the risk? We donate eggs to that to that convent, right? Hoping that it takes out the probability that it will rain during that time. So that's one way of mitigating. But then you also, so you risk assessment involves probability and impact, right? So you can also reduce the impact by, I don't know, for the corrupt the corrupt sponsors. I don't know what we just say the show will go on, rain or shine, right? But for the guests, we make sure that they're not affected by, making sure that they'll fit in the what the platform with roof, or we set up tents so that they can
That's
actually, yeah. So those are part of mitigation, or you can eliminate the risk, right? For that situation, you cannot eliminate that risk unless you can talk to God and say, "Hey, God, can you make sure that it doesn't rain during that time?" Right? That's taking it too far. Does that answer your question, John?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what I want you to realize also, and this is not in the text. Have you heard about? Have you heard or read about Nassim Taleb's book called "The Black Swan"? Anybody here heard about the Black Swan?
No, sir.
No. Okay. So when you hear of swan, what color gets into your mind? What is the color of a swan?
Black.
white, sir. White.
White, right? White swan. Not until you go to Australia, you'll find Australia or New Zealand. No, they're almost the same. You'll actually get to see black swans, right? Um, and literally they got black feathers. Right? But the concept that Nassim Taleb presented in his book, The Black Swan, is that there are actually events that has very low probability of occurrence, but has a very high impact. Can you give me an example of that, especially in recent memory? Anybody?
Sir,
Very low probability of
one
occurrence.
more time nga,
Yes.
sir. Hi. Ano sir yung
Can
premise?
you think of an event or a happening or something that has very low probability of occurrence but very high catastrophic impact?
COVID.
Pandemic po.
COVID is one of them, right? How many
Corruption.
people? Corruption in the Philippines.
Flood
No,
control.
no. I think that's normal.
That's a recurring, yeah.
Yung low
Lifestyle.
probability po dun is yung na-expose.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're right. It's not really that for the perpetrators. They think that, hey, I'll take this risk because there's a low probability that it will be exposed.
Correctly.
But once they get exposed, the senators all the way down, or all the way from the president down, maybe, right? The impact is tremendous. Those are your black swan events. All right. So it doesn't mean that if the risk factor is low simply because the probability of occurrence is low, that you should disregard it. You should still take a look, take it into consideration, uh, and especially those with very high risk. Make sure you plan for it as well. In fact, one of the reasons why Nassim Taleb wrote about this is because he's an investor. He's got a firm that has only about two people as his employees, and the reason is because he's betting on very low probability financial events that will have catastrophic impact. And so when the world financial market collapsed, he made a big, he became a millionaire because he bet on that collapsing. It's a very low event probability, but it's got global impact. So always think about that. So that's one thing, black swan events. The other thing is that when you're planning, as they say, when you're planning, usually you use statistical techniques like linear regression, multiple linear regression, similar things, right? Um, and that's fine. In fact, companies do that. But if you're an astute strategic planner, you take into consideration those normal occurrences. But what you need to really worry about are Again, those black swans. What are the unexpected things that could actually derail the normal curve, right? So everybody's expecting, say, for example, a growth of GNP would, like the Philippines growth is about 5% per year over the last 30 years, right? And so they'll say, yeah, it will grow no matter what we do, whatever corruption there is, it will still grow at 5%, right? But you never know. And what happened was during COVID, the Philippines was not prepared, and the GNP dropped significantly down below, much below 5%. Those are unexpected risks that doesn't fall within the normal sort of prognostication. So think about black swans and think about it's called discontinuities. What will, because we're used to continuity, you have to think about discontinuities because those are the two things that could derail you. Okay, next slide, please. Now we move on from risk and risk management to the actual scheduling, your activities. Unless you have any follow-up question on the previous topic.
Answer.
All right. So now we start planning and scheduling. The important things to learn here from the project management perspective is to be able to identify what is known as a work breakdown structure. Has anybody not heard about work breakdown structure?
The
Everybody
action
knows.
steps, sir. Action
Uh,
steps.
meron ba sa inyo na hindi this your first time to hear about work breakdown structure?
First time po.
First time. Okay. Okay, we'll go to there. You're actually doing it. You just don't know what it's called. You learn that from the core, and I'll show you how and why. So the things that you need to learn in project management is how to develop a work breakdown structure, or WBS. You need to be able to sequence activities. You need to identify and assign resources. You need to be able to estimate the duration of an activity. And you need to be able to identify the critical path. And we will go through each one of them. So let's start with the work breakdown structure. Next slide, please. Okay. A work breakdown structure is a hierarchy of project deliverables and their associated components, right? The technique here is you start with the end product, the finished product, and then you work backwards. The reason why I said you already know that is because it's called reverse planning in ROTC, right? So instead of let's say you have your goal as a company with 3 platoons is to take hill number XYZ or hill number 23, right? You don't start by looking at the details of organizing, planning, allocating the sources, etc., devising strategy. You start with, okay, if we're already in hill number 23? And you work backwards. How do you get to hill number 23? By working backwards, right? Or a simple way to also think about that is when you're building a house, you don't plan by looking, say, okay, what are the materials that I need to build the house? Who are the people that I need to hire to build the house, etc. You don't go to the details right away because most probably you'll miss something or you'll forget something because you're dealing with so many things and they're all over the place. Instead, you think about the finished house. Okay, start with, okay, if I have a finished house, what would it take to actually build that house? So you chop it down. Okay, you're looking at the house. Okay, what are the parts of the house? You have the roof part, you have the walls, you have the foundation, you have the insulation, you have the electrical, etc. So once you break it down into the components of the house, then you can tackle each component the same way. So, foundation. If you're gonna build a house, uh, you need to have a foundation. How do you set up the foundation? Well, you need to have posts that will serve as the foundation of the house, right? Which means that you need to have, you need to pour concrete that will serve as the base for the posts. So, pouring concrete would be one of them. Um, then, before you can pour concrete, you need to dig a hole, right? So, those activities are needed in order to build the foundation of the house. Okay, so do you see where I'm getting at? By doing it that way, you actually start with the big picture first, and you chop it down to smaller components, so that you don't actually miss anything, and you don't get overwhelmed, and you can focus on one part before you actually get lost in the other parts. Right? And once you've done each of those parts, then you can easily come back again and actually mentally uh, put the different pieces together to build the house. Right? And that's your forward planning, which is usually where people start, is forward planning. But in project management, you actually start with the end product and do a reverse planning like how we do it in ROTC. Any questions so far?
None, sir.
Next slide. Yes, next slide, please. Okay, here's an example, a simple example of how you break things down. So this is a work breakdown structure. If you're gonna say, you're planning a wedding, right? So instead of uh, worrying about, okay, who will be my tailor, who will cater my wedding, who's gonna mail an invitation, you can easily get lost in the details. So instead of that, you say, okay, what do we want to achieve by so and so date? We will have a wedding, right? So then, what do you need to have in place in order to have a successful wedding? Well, you need to have invitations set up. You need to have food, and you have, the bridal component. I wonder why they didn't put the the groom's component, right? Anyway, uh, and then what you do is for each of the major components, you break it down further, and for each of the subcomponents, you break it each one of them further and further and further. So it becomes a nested hierarchy, right? That way, it's again, you don't get lost in the details, and it's easier to see the bigger picture. And this is important because your work breakdown structure and the components of those work breakdown structure becomes the elements of your planning, so that they actually feed in on the different activities or deliverables that you want to achieve during certain times, and then it will help you in actually coming up with a plan. So any questions before we proceed? Now, next slide, please. Okay, anybody would like to read this, the definition?
I'll do it, sir.
Please. Okay, John. All right.
Work is not duration. Work, the amount of effort, minutes, hours, days needed to accomplish a task. Duration, the period of time needed to get the work done from start to finish.
Okay, John, give me an example that differentiates work from duration.
Uh, hmm.
Are you the one in IT, John? If I remember
No,
the
sir,
last
si JJ.
JJ. What are you doing?
Sa development, sir, sector.
Okay. The Oxfam.
Yes,
All
yes.
right, Oxfam. Let's say, how long does it take to build a poultry? Say, to house 100 chickens.
A month, maybe, sir?
A month? Okay. Uh, so that's work, right? How
That's
long
work,
does it take
yes.
to build a poultry? About a month. When you say duration, how long does it actually take to build the poultry? Let's say you're building it, say, I don't know, in one of the remote islands in the Visayas.
Mm, So parang this is the work is sort of the ideal and duration will be the actual
Okay, good.
implementation. Yeah.
Yes. So the work is, the work is it. How long does it take in this case to build a poultry? That's assuming you have everything in place. You got the materials, etc. How long does it actually take you to build a poultry? Right. That's work, and it's measured in the same way: minutes, hours, days. Right. Duration is, you know, you're building a poultry in the remote island in the Visayas, and you're saying you can build it in a month. The duration is the actual time you need to actually get the work from start to finish. So that includes everything that goes with, procuring the materials, delays in transporting the materials, availability of the carpenters to actually, prioritize your poultry, right? All of those things. When you factor them all out, that is the duration of building, in this case, a poultry. Okay. So work is your starting point, but what we're interested in the from the project management perspective is how long does it take to do the job, or the duration in real practical terms. Uh, any question?
Yes, sir. So
Yes.
clarification po, because I work in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, broker ng office spaces. So I'm part of a company that does that.
Mm-hmm.
Tapos, so for example, ito yung na inisip kong scenario. So just tell me if I'm getting the definitions right.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of work, the work of actually um like calling landlords to get their offers, or to see yung to process the offer that they give us, break it down into the terms that we need the client to know, make a
Mm-hmm.
counter offer. But basically, the actual things done in the process of negotiation is very simple, doesn't take very long. But the duration takes much longer because of all the approvals necessary
Mm-hmm.
on the side of the landlord's management, on the side of the client,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Is that what it means, work versus duration?
Yes. So essentially, drafting the contract, how long does it take? An attorney can do it, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes with the electronic pro forma statements, right? But how long does it take to actually get the contract out? Well,
Mhm.
you know, you got the weekends, you got the holidays, you got availability of attorneys, you got the pile of work that the attorney needs to look at, and yours is at the bottom of the heap, right? So the duration would be much longer, and that's what you're interested in. Yeah, but you hit you know, the problem in the head, right? You are able to distinguish work from duration. Ellie, you got a question? Raise your hand.
Hi, Sir Tom and everyone. I'm just actually relating also WBS to like
Mm-hmm.
creating a project Gantt chart wherein you already list the activities. You know, you assign a specific period or
Mm-hmm.
days
Mm-hmm.
how to accomplish that work. So I suppose that's the work side. And then the duration is actually when you plot it, which comes first because there are some activities that is dependent to a previous activity. Is that
Mm-hmm.
um, impression correct, sir? Between work and
Uh,
duration, or not
no,
necessarily?
not necessarily, but we'll actually tackle that. It's a good segue for that part. We'll go to each one of them, and actually I'll give example of how to use the gun, how to develop a gun chart. So we'll get to that point. So thank you for asking that question. Any other question, clarification, comments? All right. If none, let's next slide, please. Okay, here are some tips when planning and scheduling activities in a project. Right. One, you identify and assign resources. That's important because that will influence the duration, especially. Then estimate the duration of identified activities, components, deliverables based on the following. And this is answering one of the question, especially the real estate, right? How do you determine um, the duration of a project? You do that. One of the ways is to draw from your own experience. Like if you've been working in that field for a while, you get an idea as to how long it takes, depending on the type of customer that people that's working with you in a particular project, and you get sort of an average, and also the spread of the time that is needed to actually complete a particular task, right? Another way to do that is to ask a reference, or you know somebody working with you in the office, especially the old timers, and you ask them, how long does this process step take, right? So that's one way to actually identify duration. Or you can actually outsource with an expert. So let's say you basically have a company that your real estate company partners with in terms of developing contracts for, say, a real estate type of problem or opportunity, and you basically outsource that part of contract drafting to that group, and you agree on the terms so that, for example, they can promise you that they'll deliver, the result within, say, uh, 1 week. So that way, you already have sort of a good idea as to how long it will take, or the duration for you to actually accomplish that particular part of, you know, a process step or steps, right? Um, if you want to ask me, do we have a formula for that? Well, yes and no. Um, the general formula is, it says, you estimate the project duration, and I told Edric about this. If you think you can do it in 1 week, multiply it by 3, and that is most likely what you will end up doing, right? And then as you become more and more adept at it, that's the time when you actually shorten the duration because your estimate becomes better. But rule of thumb, if you think a project will require, say, 3 days to complete, multiply it by 3, and that's 9. So you're looking at about a week and a half, given the weekends and holidays, right? So just rule of thumb. There are other techniques, but I won't go into that for this workshop. Any other questions before we move on?
Sir, may
Yes.
um may tips po ba kayo for the context of like a work context versus a volunteer context?
The rule of 3 is your minimum. So pagka volunteer context, it goes all the way to infinity, right? Um, yeah, it's it depends on the tasks and the value placed by participant on the task. If the participants are motivated, highly motivated because they value the activity, for example, then most probably they'll actually be more active and contribute more. Especially if they know the risk involved if that particular task doesn't happen and what it means to them. Right? So there's that personal sort of stake that they have in a particular task within the project, for example. Uh, if not, then it can take longer. Um, but I think the question that you need to ask is, it's like managing risks, because that will be a risk factor. If this activity doesn't get done, what is the risk or what's the impact on the project, and what is the probability of that happening. The probability will depend on the people working on that. So by this time, or if you're just starting, you don't know the capabilities or motivation of your team members. But as time goes on, you already know who to trust, how far you can trust them. So your probability envelope actually becomes narrower. So you get a better estimate, and therefore you can then look at, going back to the risk management, the different risk management strategies, right? Do you outsource? Do you mitigate the risk? Do you accept the risk, etc.? What are the strategies involved in each one of them? So that's the tip that I can give you in that regard. Did that help, Liz?
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
And real estate. Uh, I was involved for a while, almost 5 years, in facilities management, among the things that I worked on.
Talaga, sir. Anong
Yeah, and
company po?
it's we're a federal agency, and we
Oh.
actually rent our office through what's known as the General Services Administration. It's another government agency that owns and rents government properties to other government agencies, right? And our lease is actually expiring, so I have to negotiate, talk with the GSA folks, negotiate, the lease renewal, or we look for other locations where we can transfer the office. And boy, that's a nightmare because there's so many steps, so many sub departments that we need to talk about, and the timeline is almost impossible because um, it's hard to know what your timeline is because you don't know who the people are and what are the processes involved. Because we don't do it every day. You do it every year, 10 years or so, right? So nobody's an expert. So that's a nightmare. We were working on it for a year and a half, and then suddenly COVID struck, and we have to change all of the timelines. So we have to start from scratch after that. But anyway, that's a real life example. Next slide, please. Now we're getting into the serious stuff, the one that was also asked earlier. Uh, we're now looking at critical path, right? And this is one of the, aside from work breakdown structure, the critical pathing is one of the signature skills as well as concept that is unique to project management. And this is something that is really very important and will help you a lot. Um, Moving back, um, we're actually used to, for the most part, and for most people are used to a linear way of thinking. If you want to go from point A to point B to point C to point D, most people will actually go from, start with point A, go to B, B to C, C to D, D to E, right? Does that sound familiar? Um, in project management, the mindset is quite different. It's not necessarily linear. You can actually do a lot of things simultaneously. And so, one of the things that you do is look at the different activities and look at the sequencing of those activities and which of those activities have a prior requirement of having certain activities done first before it can be done. And also, in the same way, if you don't do a particular activity, what will be the downstream activities that will be impacted by that? Uh, Having said that, the next question is, what's a critical path, and what does it do? What good does it do in terms of planning and implementing projects? Okay. Uh, this definition that's on the slide is a little bit confusing, but actually it's not when I show you an actual example. But going through the slide, just for formalities. The critical path involves identifying activities that have no flexibility in start and end. They can't be started earlier because they're waiting for completion of another activity, and they can't be completed later than scheduled without causing succeeding activities to be late. Now, who's not confused with that at this point? Is that crystal clear, or uh, are you guys confused? Don't understand what it's all about? Um, Give me a reaction of
Well, sir, we
for
have
those who are confused.
sir, we have already identified the start and end dates, so uh, maybe it's a little less confusing. But
No, I mean, does definition make it clear to you what a critical path is?
actually, no, sir.
Okay. Let's move on. I'll chop it down in pieces. So let's move on to the next slide, please. Okay. Um, so when you're planning, you get the list based on the work breakdown structure. You get a list of activities or milestones. You can approach it both ways. You can either list the things that you're gonna be doing, or why are you doing those activities anyway? You want to get a particular result, right? And that's a milestone. So you can either have an activity and a name for that activity, or the end product of your activity, which is a milestone. Okay. And Jan would, having worked with Oxfam, I think you're, uh, I think Oxfam emphasizes that we are more interested in the milestone than in the activity, because you can do a lot of busy activities and not necessarily hitting the milestone. They want to see, okay, what have you actually accomplished?
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
yep. So, um, this box, and you'll see why it's shown like that, has a number of components. So, on the upper left, it says ES, that's earliest start. That's the earliest you can start a project or that activity, right? So you put the when you can actually start that. Right? D underneath in the middle is called the duration, and we were discussing that earlier. That's the actual amount of time you need to actually complete that particular activity. And as I mentioned, uh, duration is different from what is it? Different from
Work.
nakalimutan na.
Work,
Work.
Huh?
sir. Work.
Okay, work. Duration is the real thing, right? Work is the actual component that could be done, you know, the ideal, basically, start and completion time. But the real thing is your duration. So that's represented by D. EF is the earliest finish, meaning what is the earliest time that you can finish working on this activity? Or what is the earliest time that you can deliver that particular milestone? Right? Below, on the lower left, is latest start. What's the latest time that you can start this activity? And the one on the right, LF, is what's the latest time that you need to finish that activity. Okay? And in between the F are float, and I'll explain to you what that is later on. And that's important too. Any questions before we go to the next slide? All right. This is just a way of actually organizing your data so that um, you'll be able to calculate the um, uh, critical path later on. Next slide, please. So in project management, we're fond of uh, doing networks. So we put all of the activities in a network. And the reason why it's done is because it shows you the relationship between different activities. And for the most part, Gantt chart doesn't do that. So that's why network, being able to actually initially do your planning in network is very important and very helpful. So the example that I give here is a simple one. Your office is interested in actually setting up an in-house computer system for your office, right? So what's listed here are the different activities that you need in order to get that computer system set up from start to finish. And identified here are the different uh, activities. Like the first one on the left, it says needs analysis. What is it that you actually need in the office? Because that will determine what type of software or computer that you're gonna be purchasing. So the next boxes, the upper one is select a software, right? The one below is select a computer or computers. Right? Once you've done that, you go to the next part, which is you actually buy it, right? Purchasing. Once you did the purchasing, there will be some lag time before from the time you purchase and paid, and when it will be delivered to your office. And then, of course, you also need people to get trained in the system. So training is another activity that needs to be done. Now, when the equipment comes in, it needs to be installed. And then once everything's installed, everybody's trained, then you need to have the final closeout, which is accepting the system is completed. Questions so far? Okay.
Answer.
All right.
Answer.
Yeah. Okay. So you'll notice that one of the things that you see with a network diagram like this is that you can actually see not only the sequence of activities, but you also see what activities, how each activities are related to other activities. So, for example, needs analysis is the first thing that needs to be done because it fits in the selection of software and computer. But the selection of software and computer also feeds into purchasing, meaning they converge, the results converge into purchasing, so that you need to have the selection first of both the software and the computer before you can actually do the purchasing. So from needs analysis, there's a divergence of the arrow because you actually need to go two different steps um, after needs analysis. But each of those two separate steps converge again because you need to purchase, right? And it diverges again in terms of delivery and training, etc. So far, so good. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So now we start looking at scheduling and programming this. The first strategy or technique that is shown here is it's called the forward pass. The forward pass meaning you start with the start, in this case needs analysis, and you move forward towards the completion of the project. That's why it's called forward pass. And starting with the first activity that you need to do, in this case needs analysis, you calculate, well, you determine first when you're gonna start, and that's your earliest start time. In this case, I just put there 0. Start right at 0, as a base, and then you add to that the duration of that activity. So in this case, the duration of that activity is 5 days. This is measured in days. I just put 5 without the days, but it's supposed to be days. So you start at 0. The duration of, or how long it takes to do the needs analysis is 5 days. And once you've done that, you put on the upper right corner the answer, meaning when you calculate ES plus D equals early finish, which is 5. And what that means is that if you start at the beginning 0, it takes 5 days to do the needs analysis. So 0 plus 5 days. The earliest that you can finish would be 5 days later, right? Since the start date. That's your early finish. Now you do the same. What you do is now you carry over that early finish and put it in the next set of boxes or activities that is linked following the needs analysis. In this case, it's selection of software and selection of computer. So your earliest finish from the needs analysis becomes your early start date for the selection of software as well as for the selection of the computer. Is that clear? Right? Okay. So, and you repeat the whole process, meaning when you're at the selection of the software, you ask, how long will it take from needs analysis all the way to completion of the selection of software? Well, it's 5, which is the early start for the software, plus 5 days of duration to select the software for a total of 10 days, right? To the time that will be the earliest that you can finish those two tasks, meaning the needs analysis and the software selection. Now you go down to the selection of computer. Needs analysis will be finished after 5 days. So that becomes the start date, meaning the date when you can start the selection of the computer. Okay? With that as your starting point for the selection of computer, how long will it take to finish that step? Well, it takes 3 days to select the computer. So 5 plus 3 days, meaning early start date plus the duration, gives you the earliest finish, which is 8 days. So you put that on the upper right hand corner. Okay. Any questions so far?
Answer.
Okay. Now here's the decision point. You have two activities that goes or converges into the next one, purchasing. Okay. The selection of software or the activities that leads all the way to the end of the selection of software takes 10 days. The set of activities that leads to the selection of computer takes 8 days. Which one would be your earliest date? Well, what is the earliest time that you can start purchasing? The earliest time would be the one with the biggest or the longest or the longest earliest finish date, which in this case is 10, right? You cannot start at 8 or day 8 because your selection of software is not yet done. So the only time you can start purchasing is when all of the essential components, in this case, there are only two, selection of software and selection of computer, is completed. And the one that's holding it back is the selection of software because it takes 10 consecutive days to get to that point. So the rule here is the largest EF, the largest early finish, carries over to the next earliest start date. That's why for purchasing, the earliest date that you can start is 10 days. So you put 10 instead of 8. Everybody got that? All right. If you got that, then you proceed the same way as before in order to figure out how long it will take to complete purchasing at that point. It's 10 plus a duration of 1 gives you 11 days. So to complete purchasing from needs analysis all the way to selection of computer and software, it will take you 11 days. And you do the same thing. All right? Okay. Next slide, please. Now, this one is called backward pass because it's the reverse of the forward pass, obviously, right? Right. But here, you don't start at the start, you start at the end. and you work backwards. That's why it's called backward pass. Okay. So here we start with the acceptance, the one on the rightmost side, and what you do is you actually look at 19, which is the earliest. Let's see, the earliest time to finish the whole sequence leading up to acceptance. Just bring it down to the bottom, which is 19, bottom right hand corner, and that will be your starting point for calculation. In this case, the calculation moves backwards. So 19 minus the duration, which is 1, gives you 18, the one on the lower left hand corner. And you do the same thing over and over with the rest, except, okay, let's look at what's going on here. If you go to installation, you carry over 18, you subtract 1, you get 17. You carry over 17 to the delivery lag time. You subtract 6, which is your duration, and you get 11. Okay. Now, going down on the training, you move 18 as the starting point on the lower right hand for training. So you subtract 3 days, and you get 15, which is the latest start time, right? Now, here, take a look. The next question is, when do you actually start the purchasing using the backward pass? So here, since we're going backwards, we reverse the rule, meaning you actually look for the smallest, latest start and carry that over to the latest finish of the next activity going back. That's why in the purchasing side, instead of selecting 15, we actually selected the lowest, the smallest LS, and put 11 on your latest finish. And then you subtract 1, which is the duration. You get 10, which is your latest start time for purchasing. And then since you only have one node here in purchasing and it diverges into 2, select software and select computer, you simply carry over the 10 as your latest finish for both select software and select computer. And then you do the rest. Okay? Questions so far? Anybody confused? You want me to explain again? Or you want me to move forward? All right. I'm assuming no question asked means you all got it. Next slide, please. Okay. What is a float? Is it an ice cream float or something floating? Anybody can tell me what a float is or guess what it is?
Buffer or buffer time or waiting time, sir?
It's slack.
Slack. Ah, okay.
Slack. Okay. It's how much slack do you have, right? Um, or do you actually have slack? Can you actually goof around and finish what you're doing without affecting the whole project, right? So, and it's called float because you can actually float that activity around. There's leeway for you to move the activity at an earlier or later date as you may wish it to be. That's why it's called a float. So how you calculate the float is quite simple. You actually either look at the early start time or date and the latest start date, right? You subtract one from the other, and if you get 0, it means you don't have any slack or you don't have any float. And any number above 0 is your float. So in our example, if you look at the first activity needs analysis, earliest start time is 0, latest start time is 0. So 0 minus 0 is 0, so you don't have any float, right? Now, if you look at a select software activity, your earliest start time is 5 days. Your latest start time is 5 days. 5 minus 5 is 0. You don't have any float. If you look at the select computer activity, your earliest start date is 5 days. Your latest start date is 7 days. So 7 minus 5 is 2. It means you have 2 days of float. You have 2 days of leeway to goof off or reschedule at some later date the selection of the computer and not really affect the total project completion. And that's essentially what float is all about and how you calculate it. Okay? So you can either calculate it using the early start date and latest start date, or earliest finish and latest finish. Right? Subtracting one from the other. If you get 0, you don't have any float. If it's above 0,
12
those are the
hours.
number of days that you can spare. Okay. So, what is the critical path? The critical path are those activities that doesn't have any float. Meaning, all you need to do is look at your network diagram, look at activities that have 0 float, and those are your critical path. Okay. What does that mean? If you're in a critical path, um, there's no, you have to do everything on time. Otherwise, any delay will delay the whole project. That's why it's a critical path. Whereas those in the activities in a non-critical path, you have some leeway to actually play around with those activities, right? Uh, what I usually do in practice is I first do the network diagram. So I do the relationship between different activities, then do this calculation, the the either the forward pass or the backward pass or both, right? And calculate the float. Once I've calculated the float, looked at the diagram again, identify the critical path, I mark it with a different colored arrow. In this case, I change the color to red arrow to indicate critical path. Then the next step that I do is actually to arrange the whole network diagram with the critical path at the center. And next slide, please. I'll show it to you. Okay. So it's the same thing. I rearrange it, but this time I actually arrange it with the critical path as the base. So now you see here that needs analysis followed by select software, purchasing, delivery, lag time, installation, and acceptance are all in the critical path. Any delay in one of these activities will delay the whole project. But the select computer and training are not in the critical path, which means that, between needs analysis and purchasing, you actually have 2 days that you can spare uh, to actually when you would like to start the selection of the computer. You can opt to do it earlier, right? Right at the end of needs analysis, or you can do it later as long as you don't do it more than 2 days extra of what is needed. Otherwise, it becomes a critical path, meaning it will also delay the whole project. But at least that gives you an idea of which activities uh, can actually be delayed or postponed for a while, as long as you don't miss or as long as you don't exceed the float that is assigned to it. And in terms of managing the project, this is also important because what you want to do is to make sure that you assign the best people and the best resources that you can assign to activities that are within the critical path. Why? Because if you don't put the best people there and they don't perform as expected, it will delay not only that activity but the whole project itself. That's why it's important to do that. What that also means is that you can also, corollary to that, you can also assign, you know, less proficient or able people to actually do the activities that are with large floats. Right? Um, if you're incorporating also costs into this whole thing, what that means is that, if there are activities that require cost, say you have to pay certain things, right? Um, and you're trying to make sure that you spend your money wisely. What you do is you prioritize spending those money in the critical path activities. And what you do is you can play with delaying, for example, some of the activities that are in the float so that you don't upfront pay or down the line pay earlier than needed those types of activities. Okay. So there's a lot of advantages of actually calculating the critical path because it it's advantageous for the project manager to do that, not only from the perspective of making sure that the project gets completed on time, but also in terms of labor allocation as well as resource allocation purposes. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So we had a question earlier and regarding Gantt chart. What a Gantt chart is simply a table like this. You in one column you put the tasks or activities that you want to do. In this case, needs analysis, select software, blah blah blah. Put the duration, and using those two information, you can then create a timeline. In this case, I put it in terms of bar chart of how long does each activity it takes from start to completion. What you will notice here is that I mark the critical path activities in red, so you can easily see which ones are critical path. And the reason being that the Gantt chart uh, doesn't actually give you an idea as to which ones are critical path activities. So if you just rely on the Gantt chart without doing the networking diagram, you really can tell by just listing the tasks and the duration of each task which ones are critical path activities. And without the network diagram, you also don't know how each of those activities link to each other. So that's why whenever I do this, I start with a list of activities and duration and construct a network diagram so that I can see the interrelationship between the different activities, and from there calculate um, the float so that I can actually determine which among the different paths that may come up is the critical path. And once I've done that, that's the only time I actually go and convert that into a Gantt chart. So the question you may ask is, why do you still need to do the Gantt chart? Well, for one thing, if you don't have the project management software, it's the easiest way to actually do the scheduling because it's almost in every computer. You have spreadsheet programs in computer, which means you can actually do tables, and tables you can do a Gantt chart. So it will be cost efficient, very low learning curves, and it's very visual so that anybody who's looking at your schedule of activities, even if they don't have any training in project management, can easily and readily interpret what's in the Gantt chart. Right? Questions?
None, sir. Pero this is what I wanted us to have after this meeting, after this session. Each
Okay.
committee will create their critical path and their Gantt chart para we
Yeah.
all have something to look at. Not just not just verbal and um, to easily track yung ating mga
Hmm.
activities sir, for the preparation and
Yeah.
batch.
Now, I was in a hurry. I was about to show you another example of network and Gantt charting that relates more to what you're doing, because for the Dash project, you actually have a number of committees, right? So you have the media communications group, you have the organizing or whatever. Uh, it's a good first step to actually ask each of those committees to actually come up with their list of activities and the network diagram of those activities. The reason being that what you want, once each committee have done their respective uh, network and Gantt charting, is you want to integrate everything together. Remember the work breakdown structure? The committee's work is just one component of the big project. And you need, as a second step, to actually integrate all of them, which means that you actually need to create the overall project network diagram and Gantt chart. Uh, and what's interesting that you'll find out is that there are certain parts of there's certain committee work that are critical path types of activities, which means that if they don't finish particular projects on activities on time, it will delay the whole big project. Right? If you just look at it from a committee perspective, if you develop network diagrams and Gantt chart for each committee, you won't see the big picture. And you know the committee may say, well, we can skip on this or delay this a little bit, not knowing that those activities are actually part of the critical path. But you won't know that unless you integrate everything into that one big project Gantt chart and network of activities. So
Yes, sir. That's true.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, all right, we're done with the planning and scheduling. What's next? Next slide, please. Now it's time to roll up your sleeves and do the work, right? So we're now in the execution phase of the project management cycle. And the mindset here is to engage people through consistent and shared accountability. And I won't go into much detail here because that in itself is, in the PMP certification course, that's one whole day, one whole day session. But next slide, please. I'll just give you a quick overview of what is needed here and how it can help you. Next slide, please.
Sir, hindi pa gumalaw. The
Hindi
next
pa
slide.
gumagalaw.
I'll try again.
Baka
Sir.
na-stuck.
Stuck.
Baka na-stuck. Okay, there you are. Got it.
There.
So this is the management part in project management. As I mentioned to you, Dr. Peter Drucker, the management guru, basically said, what is the function of management? It's planning, organizing, staffing, implementing or motivating, and coordinating and controlling. Right? You're actually now managing people and resources. And the most important component of that is people, as Brad, Andy, and Chito said earlier in our session in mentoring. So when you're dealing with people, you're looking at behaviors, right? And as a project manager, what is recommended by Franklin Covey is that you you should have this key behavior, and this involves always demonstrate respect for the other person. Okay? And I really subscribe to that. Normally, I demonstrate respect. It doesn't matter whether you're, a street cleaner or a waiter in restaurant or the CEO. I treat you the same way. Right? And there are only 4 times in my life where I intentionally did not demonstrate respect because I thought I was teaching the other person a lesson, and it didn't work out well. I promise not to do that again. So learn from my experience as much as possible. Demonstrate respect for everybody, because that rubs on other people as well. As the saying goes, when Justice Jose Abad Santos, I don't know if you know him from history. One of the things that he's Chief Justice of the Supreme Court during the Quezon presidency, and he remained in the Philippines when the Japanese invaded, to sort of be the representative of the exile government. He was actually executed by the Japanese because he stuck to his values and won't serve as a puppet for the Japanese. But anyway, one of the things that he was asked is, should I show respect for another person who's disrespectful of me? And his response was, show respect to the other person, not because they are worthy of respect, but because you are one, meaning you are worthy of respect. So when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's a good lesson. Show respect to everybody, not because they may or may not be respectable people, but you're not showing respect to them not because of who they are, but because of who you are. So always demonstrate respect. Uh, One of the things that you do to illustrate that is you listen first. Most of the times, people want only to hear themselves or to hear their point of view, and they don't listen. And what happens is, you actually end up miscommunicating. And worst case scenario, you actually don't get if somebody actually has a really good idea. So you miss on that. Um, uh, and this is important, especially when you're doing the stakeholder analysis. Make sure you listen a lot. And I'll give you a short story. Actually, it happened to me only a few months ago. As the chief learning officer for our region, one of the challenges that I was asked is to develop a learning metrics, so that we can measure learning, whether it's learning itself or learning programs that we are implementing. So, and I'm supposed to work with another person in our staff who's actually compiling all of the performance or the accomplishments of our regional administrator, uh, because it becomes part of his performance review, right? Every quarter. Yes, every month it's got every quarter it's got a performance review from upstairs. So, um, okay, learning metrics. So I know the literature. I acquainted myself with the different learning evaluation techniques and methods, etc. And I came up with a set of performance measures. I gave it to her. She looked at it and said, "No, that's not what I wanted. It doesn't work." I said, "Okay, let me rework it again." And I did rework it again, gave it to her. She read it and said, "No, no, it still don't get the point. That's not what I wanted. That's not a performance metric." And I scratched my head. It's like, "Oh, what do you mean that's not a performance metrics? That's what the literature is saying. That's what the practitioners say." So I reverted back to knowing the stakeholders better, right? So I basically asked her, what do you want in to see in a performance metric? And so she specified to me, okay, I want to see this, 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 this. I said, okay, I'll work that out. And a few weeks later, I came back to her and said, okay, how about this? Is this okay with you? And still, she still says, no, 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 you missed the point. It doesn't work. It's not what I asked. Right? And I'm getting frustrated at that point. So I interviewed her some more. And then when I got deeper and deeper, I what they call in the um, as in management as asking the five whys. When somebody gives an answer, you say why. Somebody gives you an answer, follow-up answer, you say but why, etc. So by asking those whys, I realized, oh boy, we're not seeing eye to eye because we're not looking at it in the same way. And the analogy that I'll give you without disclosing the facts, and to make it simpler, is it's like somebody asking you, okay, I want you to build me a table. Okay, so doing the stakeholder analysis, you say, okay, what do you mean by a table? What do you want in a table? So you're now looking at specific, measurable things that you want to see in the deliverable. Right? So, okay, the stakeholder would say, I want a wooden table that is not tall, but of the right height so that it fits me when I'm sitting. And it's lightweight, made of oak. Well, yes, made of oak, not lightweight because oak is heavy. And I want it painted with the color blue. Okay, so came to my shop, look at the requirements for the deliverables, and then created a table that's made of oak, that's of the right height, right? And it's colored blue with four legs, right? And, it's other deliverable. It has four legs. I gave it to the stakeholder, and the stakeholder says, "No, that's not a table." And you got the point that after a while, so I said, "Okay, I'll work again on the table." So afterwards, I ended up building a rectangular table, square table, round table, with different combination of height, etc. But every time I go back to the stakeholder says, "No, that's not a table." And can you guess what is going on? Anybody? Anybody would like to pose a guess as to what's going on here? And this is a good example of why you should listen as well as try to go deeper in terms of your stakeholders, what your stakeholders saying. Anybody, or you want me to call? Ellie, you still around?
Yes, sir. Sorry, driving lang.
Are you
Can you
driving?
repeat the
Sorry.
question, sir? Sorry.
What's going on between me building a table and giving it to stakeholder, and the stakeholder saying, "No, that's not a table." What may be going on?
Um, what about the impact, sir? I mean, the importance of them giving.
No, no.
I mean,
What's why am I not able to deliver what the stakeholder is asking? The stakeholder said,
why?
"I want a table, and these are the specification of the table." I constructed a table, but the stakeholder said, "No, that's not a table."
So that's, I'll be for my answer, sir.
That's a challenge. Mervin, are you still there, Mervin?
Yes, chap. Yes po. Kumakain lang.
Kumakain. Okay.
Or maybe the expectations were not clear.
Yes. um, what else might be going on here? It took me a while to figure this out, by the way. So you're not alone. Um, so when you say table, what goes into your mind? Like Liz, when you hear the word table, what goes in your mind? What do you see in your mind?
Um, if we're talking furniture po, then usually a four-legged na square or rectangle top na brown table.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good, good. John, when you hear the word table, what goes into your mind?
Yun din, sir, chinat ko, first thing that comes to mind, furniture.
Okay,
And
so how did you figure that one out?
Based on assumptions.
Okay, well,
based on the
so
client's perspective, sir,
you actually
or
need to go
want.
deeper. What happens is when I say table, it's actually a word. It's a concept, right? Now that concept doesn't mean anything, but when you hear the word table, your brain actually makes a picture of what a table is based on your experiences, or what you have seen as a table. So in your mind, you actually see, the four-legged, wooden, flat surface, etc., that we associate with table. And so when you hear the word table, literally in your mind, you see a table, and that's the cerebral interpretation of a word table, which is the stimulus is the word table, and the response of the brain is you see a picture of the table, an image of that table in your brain, right? But what if, let's say you're talking to, say, a primitive tribe in whatever, say Papua New Guinea, right? Where for them, the image that they hear, that they see when they hear the word table is actually the image of a chair, or what we call a chair, right? So when my stakeholder asks for a table, in her mind, what she's actually seeing in her mind is actually a chair. So, but what I'm seeing in my mind when I heard the word table is, you know, what we normally see as a table. So when I construct the table, four legs, right, made of wood, color blue, right height, I hit all of the specifications for the deliverables, and yet I still miss the deliverable because in the stakeholder's mind, what she's looking for is actually a chair which has four legs, made of wood, color blue, right height. Right? So, and the reason I said I brought this up is because be sure when you also try to extract what is the deliverable from your stakeholder, make sure that you're actually literally seeing the same thing because people are not necessarily seeing the same thing. People may be different. In fact, yesterday I had a dinner with a friend of mine who's a medical doctor, and her husband who's a lawyer, and we were discussing about this, the concept of perception, right? And she gave an example that, oh yeah, we were actually Todd and I were debating about the color of the dress that I'm wearing because from her eyesight she was looking at a blue dress, but her husband was seeing the same thing, the same dress, as colored green. And they were arguing, no, it's blue, no, it's green, no, it's blue, no, it's green. And then what they realized is that they're actually seeing the same thing with different colors. Interesting, right? But it's real. Anyway, enough of that. Next slide, please. Moving on. Okay. So we're now implementing the project, but throughout the whole thing, from initiation to planning to executing, you need to be constantly monitoring and making sure that you're in control. Because the mindset here is we need to drive progress through transparent communication, and this is where the communications committee should be, all the more active in the whole project management planning. You are very important because you want to make sure that everything's in control, everything's up to spec, so that you can do whatever needs to be done to put things either on track or make adjustments. So remember, you came up with project plan, a schedule, say a Gantt chart, and what you need to do with the Gantt chart is to actually incorporate there another component, which is okay. Here's the planned activities. Here's how long it will take, and you incorporate a way to actually measure your progress. So can you go back to the slide on the Gantt chart, please? Okay. So, for example, in needs analysis, uh, you know that it will take 5 days to complete, from start to finish. So what you do is that every day you actually mark where you are in terms of completing the needs analysis. So let's say on the fourth day, when you started much putting excess on the your progress towards completing the needs analysis, you realize that you've only put X on the equivalent to second day. So what that means is you need, especially since it's a critical path activity, you need to make sure that you uh, make your team member or whoever assigned to it really work on it and catch up because you're already on the fourth day and you have only completed 2 days worth of work towards completing the needs analysis, right? And that's where your monitoring and controlling comes to the fore. The same with when you're selecting software, the same thing. You mark where you are at that point and where you still need to go so that you can actually literally get a percentage completion of your project for that particular activity. And that way it will enable you to assess, are we on track? Can we still make it? If we can't, then what do we need to do to make adjustments? And how will it impact the whole project, right? So that's the significance of being able to monitor and control and communicate those information to the project team. Questions?
Sir, ano po yung format of like, so let's say you have this Gantt chart and then you want to put yung accountability updates as well. How does the format look like of that?
What I do is, so you start with that Gantt chart, right? Like how it is shown here. What I do is I also add on the right hand side another column, which is, or wherever you want to put it, uh, the name of the responsible person or the point of contact. Okay, so you know exactly who's accountable for this, right? A particular activity. So that's one. And then I also add a section there, another column, which is a remarks column. And in the remarks column, that's where you put notes as to whether there's a problem, what you're doing to correct, etc. Right? So, those are the two addition. The other one is so you color it, right? Like for example, in the needs analysis, so you have days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is when you're supposed to do it, and basically the reason or how you came up to that is you go back to the estimation of the duration, right? You actually come up with, okay, to do the needs analysis, um, I need to have XYZ in place, right? In sequential order, for example. Uh, and you basically have a sub, in essentially a sub work breakdown structure saying, uh, like for the needs analysis, I need to meet with the team on day one. I need to conduct the interview in days 2 and 3. I need to write the report in day 4, and I need to edit and finalize and submit the report on day 5. So you got those, right? Which means that either you summarize it as one whole block, or if you're the committee doing this, you may actually subdivide the needs analysis into uh, sub activities, and you actually do a sub Gantt chart to indicate that. Uh, but following just this summary example, you can basically look at the needs analysis and put access on each day, depending on whether you're able to complete the estimated component that builds up to the needs analysis. That way, you know that, oh, okay, we're already in day 4. Yes, I've done. I've met with the group. I started interviewing, um, but I haven't finished interviewing altogether. So that means that I cannot start compiling and writing the report, which is supposed to be due by day 4, because I'm still doing activities in days 2 and 3 that I'm lagging behind. But by putting excess on where you are, so basically you put excess or to signify completion day, actual completion, because the red bars here are the estimated completion, right, or the planned completion. The excess would be your actual completion. So if your excess extend only on 1, 2, and 3, and you're already in day 4, uh, and you know that you're delayed, and if you end up in day 5 and still on excess on 1, 2, 3, and 4, you know that you're what, about 75% complete, right? So you can actually quantify it, and then you really have to think about, okay, what do I need to do? Especially here, it's in the critical path. Now, if you're in the select computer activity, it's not in the critical path. So you can actually start early by doing the activity on day 6 or day 7, but no later than day 8, because you only have 2 days of slack, right? Um, and the thing here is that, even say for example you started it on day 6, and by day 8 you're still in day 6, you really don't worry that much because you still have 2 days, uh, for you to catch up. But by making sure that you monitor where you are in the whole process, that puts you on top of potential problems so that you can make adjustments ahead of time. Did that answer your question?
Yes naman, sir.
Okay. So yeah, you can put a number of creative ways to do this depending on what you intend to use it for, and what's best for you, because you still have to adjust it to the way you actually do things, right? Any other question? Okay, so let's go to the last part of the cycle, which is the closeout. Okay. Um, Most people don't do this, but it's important that you do this, because um, there are two reasons why. One is you want to measure success and reward people for contributing to that success, because it's part of the motivation. So that next time you actually tap these people again to help you in particular projects, if they know that they're getting recognized, uh, most probably they'll continue working with you. Um, and it's also important because um, when they know that they work on something and it was successful, it's morale boosting. And so you need to have that closure incorporated in the project management scheme. The other thing is that included here is a documentation of what was done, what was accomplished, what didn't get accomplished, and what did we learn from it. To a certain extent, you're already doing this and you've been trained to do this because at the end of each training, you fill out the ATR, right? The after training report, which is essentially a way to actually document what worked, what didn't work, and how can we improve better. And now, how we do the closeout in terms of measuring success and getting better is we usually end up with a celebration. So we specifically set a date to say that, okay, after this event, let's say after Dash, give it say a day or two to for people to rest for a while, and then you conduct a meeting and you discuss, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what can improve afterwards, and then you also recognize people who contributed, how well they performed, etc. And in some cases, uh, you actually issue certificate of completion or certificate of recognition and other things that would actually um, help motivate people and also mark the end of the journey, because project management itself is a journey, and it doesn't need to be very formal. um, One time I actually gathered folks from different fields and states, when I was working for the aquaculture center. And the goal of the 3-day meeting is actually for them to come up with uh, small scale aquaculture business projects that is of the 10,000 to $15,000 cost that a family can actually implement in their backyard. So that's the challenge, right? So I got 7 different groups that came up with 7 really great ideas, and at the end of the third day, presentations, meetings, workshops, etc., presentations, we held the closeout ceremony, where I actually recognized all of those who contributed, recognized the value and importance of their work, and in recognition, I actually gave them awards, right? And I just went to the dollar store and bought dollar gift items, uh, like a talking fish or uh, s- a back scratcher, etc. Right? And I gave it to different folks as a token of recognition and thanks to them, and they love it. Those are simple, cheap things, but they actually associated with the significance of what they have achieved and the recognition, public recognition of what they have done for the project, right? So small tokens can really mean big thing depending on how it is presented. So I encourage you to do the same thing. Think of something. It can simply be just uh, get together in a restaurant, get some snack, recognize people, give certificate, etc. Be creative. Um, yeah. Okay. And next slide, please. This is just an example or one of the tools on the lessons learned. Again, similar to your ATR. And that's about it. You're now project managers for non-project unofficial project management. Any questions?
No more, sir, kasi I can see na we might be it's getting late in your time.
Sorry, I have one. I
Yeah,
have one.
okay, good question. Yeah.
Yeah, sir,
Yeah,
sige.
just one, just one. This
Okay,
just
okay,
real
okay.
quick,
Go
sir.
ahead.
No. Um, eh, during the course of the discussion, sir, I noticed na there's only one role that was being referred to, no, the project manager. Right? Is that really the case for project management, or are there other roles associated with project management, like I don't know, project coordinator, project lead, or others?
Yeah. Remember, I told you that the original title of this, the full course, is just an abbreviated version, is Project Management for the Unofficial Project Manager, right? Meaning, you're actually, in most cases, you're working on different projects, but you don't know that it's a project. But by definition, you now know whether you're working on a project or not. And sometimes, your supervisor basically pass by and say, "Oh, uh, John, Mervin, I want you to pull yourselves together and do X, Y, Z," right? And it's already a project, right? Uh, some of you may be assigned unofficially as the lead project manager for that set of activities, or you may be a supervisor who was asked to assign your team members for a particular project. So what that means is that you assume different roles. If you're that supervisor, you may actually be the project sponsor, what's called a project sponsor. You're sponsoring the project because you're actually assigning some of your team members to that. Your team members can have different roles. They can be the unofficial project manager, or they can be a project participant or collaborator, right? So there are different roles, um, but they all work for the project, and everybody needs to know what project management is and what are the tools, because whether you're a project sponsor or a project team leader or a collaborator or a uh, even a stakeholder, uh, if you understand what is project management and what's involved, albeit you have different roles, you still are part and parcel of the success or failure of that project.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Uh,
Thank you, Sir Tom. Sir,
I also,
go ahead, sir.
yeah, actually, if you go to the next slide, the next slide is just extra. I was just tinkering with, I was tinkering with, um, there
As
are lots of,
sir, eh,
yeah. So this is extra, because I was just tinkering on, when I took the course or any other course, uh, most of the times they're very deterministic, and being an Asian immigrant in a mainly Caucasian Western country like the United States, there are lots of cultural differences. Okay. And I sort of talk about that during the mentoring, where even within the same organization, we actually are working with 5 generations. And you can look at each generation as 5 different cultures, right? So the question that was asked during the mentorship is, essentially, I think he's basically saying, I'm from the millennial generation. How could I make the Gen Z understand what I'm telling them? Right? Well, it's hard. Maybe that you may not even be able to do that because you're speaking a different language. So the key here is there a way by which you can actually incorporate a cultural perspective in this case, in that case, mentoring, but in our case, in project management, because most probably you'll be dealing with different people with different backgrounds, with different generations, with different essentially culture. So one way to do that is you actually break down what is organizational culture. And the best reference that I was able to dig up after doing a lot of searching and research is the framework that's given by Dr. Edgar Schein from MIT in his book Leadership and Organizational Culture. And basically, he said that organizational culture can be looked at as a pyramid with three main parts. The visible part of the culture, the one that you see, the one that you hear, the one that you observe, is visible culture. But why are they doing those things? Why? Because they have particular values and norms of behavior, how they're supposed to act. Okay. But what's driving those two things? It's based on their basic assumptions, beliefs, mindsets, paradigms, experiences. Meaning, it depends on how they see the world. So, as project managers, you have to think about these things, especially when there's misunderstanding. As cadet officers, you're actually thinking differently from the rest of the UP community. Why? For the older folks, Chito Oreta and earlier, we basically, the way we're trained in ROTC is we subscribe to Theory X. For those in the management literature, what is Theory X? Theory X is based on the assumption that people are lazy, and if you want to make them work, you have to actually push them to work. You have to punish them if they err, right? Typically, the hard type of ROTC training that the old folks got. Right? But the Generation Z is more in the theory Y, meaning people are naturally good, that they really want to work and achieve things. It's a matter of motivating them to do those things. So you see the difference here, and it reflects on the question that was asked during the mentoring. I'm a parent. How do I tell my kid to do this and not argue about things? How can my kid understand what I'm telling them? Well, maybe they can't because you have two different ways of looking at the world. So unless you recognize the ways you look at the world and the way they look at the world, it's really hard to get the two to meet. And why? Because the way you look at the world defines what your values are, and it's presented at the opening earlier about here are the values of the UP Vanguards, right? Uh, but what are your core values? What are our core values? Those core values may be different for the older folks as well as the younger folks. There are commonalities, there are foundational values. But again, you need to look at, revisit the core values and say, okay, do we actually agree on the core values? Why is that important? Because those values define the norms of behavior, how you act, right? And those two, when somebody is looking at you from the outside, from us at the outside, they don't see those values, they don't see those norms of behavior, they don't see the basic assumptions and the way we see the world. They only see what we're doing, the visible results, right? When somebody's when the office is in panic because COVID struck, nurses and doctors are dying. Why is it that Andy Licaros stays on and still go to the office and fight for the patients and the doctors and nurses, despite the politicians forcing him to basically accept them when they're not actually threatened with COVID? It's because of that's the visible result that they see. What they don't see is that it's got these values that was developed at home as well as in the core that drives all of those. So it's a complex thing. But the other thing is also, I have to add something to Dr. Shine's model, is that culture is important, but it's not the only thing that drives behavior. Individuals have agency, meaning we also have the capability to change things or influence things. And what may actually influence us, how we actually do things, is our motive. Right? When people start, contractors and senators actually getting uh, kickbacks, right, for the construction projects, it's not just the culture, the organizational culture that's involved. There's also an agency. There's a motive among the participants that's actually driving their behavior. And usually that's the one that that can get them jailed, because usually those motives can be criminal in nature, right? But the point that I'm saying here is that uh, management is, you're dealing with people, and when you're dealing people, it's complex, and so you need to understand or try to understand what's going on. And that's why in our current world, which is rapidly changing, one of the important skills that you need to possess and develop is continuous learning, lifelong continuous learning, because things change rapidly, especially nowadays, that you really need to be on top of things. Learn, learn, learn. Don't stop learning. And that's all I have to say. I hope you guys learned something, picked up something useful that you can apply, and also encourage you to maybe go deeper into project management on your own, just like what I did. And good luck, and um, hope you turn out to be really good project managers. Yes, Liz.
Hi, sir. Quick question po, relating to this discussion of culture and norms and values.
Mhm,
What would you advise po? Because, 'di ba, as vanguards, we all were trained in the same culture. And we all experience the core norms of how things are run. So, we had we had FCQs, TTs the next day, um, probably however you're managed by your EXO or your core throughout the week. And yung question ko po is, how do we adjust to no longer being in the core context where it's very easy to um, enforce accountability via methods such as ayun po, such as compliance, etc. And the fact that you saw each other at the very least every Friday and Saturday made it a lot easier to ensure that things got done. What are the norms that we can adopt that come from more civilian settings uh, into our how we do projects now? Things that we might be have like not been doing during the core. Kasi for example po, kanina when you were talking about showing appreciation to volunteers at the
mhm,
closing of a project,
mhm,
um, that's something na hindi po hindi po necessarily ginagawa sa core. Um, kasi well, it can happen like if your upper class decided, let's celebrate itong natapos natin. But it
mhm,
also very well might not because instead you just have your debriefing tapos ano yung mali ninyo tapos comply yung mga mistakes rather
mhm.
than celebrating yung pinag-volunteeran nyo. So ayun, so hearing about yung sinabi niyo po na to show appreciation instead was something na quite, let's say, oh, pwede pala yun. And I see the rationale for it. So, yun po, do you have other tips that you can share?
That's a big topic of conversation that I would like to do with the Brads and the core. um, there's nobody saying that even if you're in the core as a cadet officer to other cadet officers, that you cannot give recognition. In fact, it's encouraged. If you really look at the manuals, military manual, uh, motivation is a big topic that's covered in military leadership, right? And it can be shown in different ways. In fact, the one of the things that um, the Corps taught me is to figure out how my fellow cadet officers were actually able to motivate their people. Uh, I can think of one during one of the summer camp. There was one cadet, she's a cadet captain during that time. We will line up in the quadrangle in each company, right? So we're all lined up in the quadrangle, and each company will actually deliver sort of their own version of pep talk. And this this company, I was impressed. That's why it's stuck in my memory. There's a popular jingle during that time about what's that? Silver Swan, the soy sauce, and the jingle goes something like Silver Swan number one, Silver Swan, Silver Swan number one, Silver Swan, and she actually created the jingle for their companies, like I think Charlie Coy number one, Charlie Coy number one, uh, Charlie Coy number one, Charlie Coy number one, Lulubog, Lilitaw, something like that. And her cadets love it. And when it's their time to actually uh, do their cheer, they're shouting at the top of their lungs, singing that song, and they also have that dance to go with it. And you can see that the morale is so high in that group, and it's because of her. She was able. Her technique is that, people will see, oh, she's soft, she's a woman, etc. But she's actually and she was one of the best cadet cadet officers in terms of motivating her company to actually perform the best that they could, not only in singing but in all aspects of the training, right? And how does she do that? You know, is one of the things that I really study and appreciate about her, because it it's not a military thing. It's actually a personal motivation thing, which means that if she can do that in that setting, most probably she can do even better in a corporate setting or in an academic setting, right? So you're only bound by your creativity, and I encourage you to actually look for ways to inculcate, recognition and motivation, because it helps in the motivation part. Uh, but on a bigger aspect, the reason why I wanted to have serious discussion about this, brainstorming with the core, is because I'm worried about the Philippines. I'm worried about the core, and I'm worried about the defense structure of the country. Uh, and one way to actually learn um, is not to just learn by looking at yourself, right? We're going to the philosophy, like um, I forgot I think it was Hume, not Hume, um, who espoused that in order to learn who you are, you have to do introspection, right? But the question is, how does a pygmy know that he is a pygmy, right? How does a fish know that it is a fish? You cannot do it just by introspection. And so there comes what we call the Hegelian dialectic, right? You actually compare yourself with others, and that's the only way that you can actually assess who you are. And it happened to me because I got the question. In the Philippines, they always say, "Oh, we're so divided because, the Ilocanos will think of them as the Filipinos, Tagalogs think of them as the Filipinos, Pampangos, the Cebuanos, etc. That we're not united, right? Okay, great. But what is reality? When you go into to other countries outside of the Philippines, guess what? Whenever they see a Filipino or hear a Filipino, they gel together. It doesn't matter whether you're from Ilocos, whether you're from the Visayas, whether you're from the Tagalog region. Outside of the Philippines, we're all Filipinos and we act like Filipinos. Right? So it breaks that stereotype. Now, relating that to ROTC, I always tell my brads when I had the chance that we need to really rethink the ROTC concept because there are outside threats that can be existential, that can dissolve the Philippines, right? And there are other things that we can learn from other countries and other systems that may apply to the Philippine situation. And as cadet officers, former cadet officers, and new alumni, take a look at how Singapore does it. Take a look at how Israel does it. Take a look at how even the United States and UK does it. Compare those, and you'll be surprised. I'll tell you, you'll be surprised. Start with Singapore, follow that with Israel, and that will give you a different perspective on how ROTC needs to be done for the better. So I'll stop at that because it will take us forever to discuss that. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity and the questions and
Yes,
your
sir.
incisive comments.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah, and also we would want to, before we all leave, and before we allow you to take your well-deserved rest, Sir Tom, we would like to present you our certificate of appreciation. This is proudly presented to you, Sir Tom Amir, 79, for sharing your valuable time, expertise, and experience during our UPVI University Mentoring Program launch and the project management workshop with the chapter leaders. Signed by yours truly and our race director, Jeff JJ. Thank you so much, Sir Tom.
Thank you very much, too. Thank you very much. The honor is mutual. Yeah. So just email it to me with the $100
yes, sir, I will.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to see you face to face one of these days. But it's
looking forward.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much,
all
sir.
Right, so thank you very much, and you all have a great Christmas holidays coming up. Be
Yes,
sure
sir.
to stay healthy and have more power to the group.
Yes, sir. And
Thank
we'll
you
see
so
you in
much,
our
sir.
next meeting.
Thank you,
Group
sir.
picture po. Group picture po kaya muna bago.
Okay.
Picture, sir.
Okay. Okay, Brad, go ahead. Who will take the picture?
I can.
And if you need anything, you can email me if and I'll try to respond as well.
Yan,
Yes,
yung
sir.
mga nasa parking lot.
So, Ellie, be sure to drive safely.
Pull over. Ayan.
Yeah, nag-park
Sige.
muna.
Right. Sige, yung pwede pang magbukas ng camera.
I think si GA nasa
Irv?
labas daw.
Okay. Alright.
Si Irv
Mervin?
Sira po camera ko.
Okay. Sige. Okay, sige, sir. Tingin sa camera. 1, 2, 3. Alright. Thank you. Isa pa. 1, 2, 3. Yan. Alright.
Right. Thank you, Brad. We have a lot of
All
work to
right.
do.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Good night. Good morning
Good
pala
night,
sa
Sir
inyo or
Tom.
good afternoon.
Yes,
Sige.
sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir.
Signing out.